For many years, Pauley Perrette was seen as one of the safest and most comforting faces on television. To millions of viewers around the world, she was not just an actress playing a role. She was a familiar presence, someone who felt reliable, warm, and emotionally steady. Every week, audiences welcomed her into their homes through their screens, and she gave them the same energy each time. She smiled, she listened, she cared. In a television landscape often filled with harsh characters and cold authority figures, Pauley's presence felt different. She represented kindness, intelligence, and emotional safety. People trusted her without questioning why. That trust became part of her identity, both on screen and in real life. Much of this trust came from her long-running role as Abby Sciuto on the hit television show NCIS. Abby was not written as a typical television character. She was smart without being arrogant, emotional without being weak, and confident without needing approval. She dressed differently, spoke differently, and behaved differently from anyone else on the show. Instead of commanding fear, she inspired loyalty. Over time, Abby became more than just a character. She became a symbol. Young viewers, especially young women, saw in her a version of themselves that television rarely celebrated. Science suddenly looked exciting. Intelligence looked cool. Being different no longer felt like a weakness. Because of this, Pauley Perrette herself became closely tied to the idea of safety and trust. Fans believed that someone who could play such a caring and honest character for so many years must be living a similarly secure life behind the scenes. The idea that anything dark or dangerous could exist behind that image felt impossible to many people. She appeared successful, respected, and protected by the powerful television machine that surrounded NCIS. From the outside, her career looked stable in every sense of the word. But public images are often carefully maintained, and they rarely tell the full story. What viewers did not see was the emotional cost of carrying that image for so long. Being seen as safe can sometimes mean being expected to endure discomfort quietly. When people rely on you as a symbol, there is pressure not to break that image, even when you are struggling. Over time, that pressure can become heavy. Silence can start to feel like a requirement rather than a choice. As the years passed, Pauley Perrette slowly stepped away from the spotlight. When she left NCIS, many fans were confused. Some believed she simply wanted a quieter life. Others assumed she was tired after years of hard work. A few rumors circulated, but nothing seemed solid enough to challenge the official narrative. The show continued. The network moved forward. The story appeared closed. Yet the truth was far more complicated. Behind the familiar smile was a woman who had been carrying fear for much longer than anyone realized. Her disappearance from acting was not sudden, and it was not random. It was a result of years spent navigating power, silence, and survival inside a system that valued consistency over well-being. For a long time, she chose not to speak openly about what she had experienced. Not because it did not matter, but because speaking came with risks. Now, at 56, Pauley Perrette has finally begun to confirm what many only suspected, not through dramatic interviews or loud accusations, but through calm acknowledgement. Her story forces a different way of looking at her career, her departure, and the cost of maintaining an image that the world refused to question. To understand how she reached this point, it is necessary to look far beyond fame and success, back to the life she lived long before the cameras arrived. Long before Pauley Perrette became a recognizable face on television, her life was defined by movement and uncertainty. She was born in New Orleans, but the idea of a permanent home never truly existed for her. Her family moved constantly, shifting from one place to another across different southern states, before eventually heading north and later west. By the time she reached her teenage years, she had already lived in more places than many people experience in a lifetime. Each move meant new school, new faces, and new rules to learn quickly. Stability was not something she grew up expecting. Instead, she learned how to adapt. Living this way shapes a person quietly but deeply. When you are always new, you learn to observe before you speak. You learn to read people, moods, and power structures carefully. You become aware of which environments are safe and which are not. For Pauley, this constant adjustment created a sharp sense of awareness. She learned early that silence could sometimes offer protection. Speaking at the wrong time or trusting the wrong person could lead to consequences. These lessons would stay with her long into adulthood. Unlike many actors who grow up dreaming of fame, Pauley's interests were very different. She was drawn to understanding human behavior, especially the darker sides of it. She wanted to know why people hurt one another, why violence repeats itself, and why systems often fail those who need help the most. This curiosity led her to study subjects like criminal justice, psychology, sociology, and criminology. Eventually, she enrolled at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York. Hollywood was not her goal. Answers were, while studying, life was not easy. Survival required taking whatever work was available. Pauley bartended in underground clubs, worked on dinner cruise boats, and handed out flyers while wearing roller skates. She became deeply involved in New York's alternative subcultures, spending nights surrounded by people living on the edges of society. These environments were not glamorous, but they were real. She was not learning about human behavior from textbooks alone. She was watching it unfold in front of her every night. The fear, desperation, hope, and resilience she witnessed left a lasting mark. During this time, trauma entered her life in a way that would shape everything that followed. As a teenager, Pauley survived sexual assault. It was an experience she did not speak about publicly for many years. Like many survivors, she carried the impact quietly, allowing it to influence her relationships and sense of safety without openly naming it. Fear became something that lived in the body, not just the mind. Even when danger was gone, the feeling of it remained. This early trauma deepened her empathy. She understood pain not as a distant concept, but as something that changes how a person moves through the world. It also strengthened her awareness of power. She saw how often victims are expected to stay silent, how easily their voices are ignored, and how systems tend to protect themselves first. These insights would later shape her advocacy work and her deep connection to people who felt unseen. When Pauley eventually moved to Los Angeles, acting was not a dream she chased with excitement. It was a practical decision. She needed work. She needed stability. She took small roles, then slightly bigger ones, slowly building a career without expectation. When she walked into the audition that would change her life, she was not searching for fame. She was searching for security. What she could not have known was that the role waiting for her would bring both success and a new kind of danger, one that felt familiar in ways she never expected. When Pauley Perrette stepped into the role of Abby Sciuto on NCIS, nothing about the moment felt carefully. The character was not the result of deep marketing studies or audience testing. Abby appeared almost quietly, without dramatic introduction, yet something about her presence immediately stood out. She was different from the typical characters audiences were used to seeing in crime dramas. She did not rely on authority or intimidation. Instead, she led with intelligence, curiosity, and emotional honesty. Viewers responded to that difference in ways no one had predicted. Abby Sciuto quickly became the emotional center of the show. While others focused on rules and command structures, Abby brought humanity into the story. She cared deeply about victims. She showed vulnerability without losing strength. Her enthusiasm for science felt genuine, not forced. For many viewers, especially young women and girls, Abby became a powerful example of what it meant to belong in spaces traditionally dominated by men. Science no longer felt distant or unwelcoming. It felt accessible. This response became known as the Abby effect, as schools and organizations noticed a rise in interest among young women pursuing careers in science and forensic studies. Pauley took this responsibility seriously. She did not treat Abby as just another television role. Drawing from her own academic background in criminology and criminal justice, she worked hard to make the character feel real. She studied forensic procedures, lab protocols, and scientific terminology until the language became natural. She wanted Abby to respect the science, not perform it superficially. That commitment showed on screen and helped build trust with the audience. Abby felt believable because Pauley understood the work her character was doing and it grew into one of the most successful television shows in the world. Pauley's role became more demanding. She appeared in every episode for many years, maintaining the same high energy and emotional availability season after season. The schedule was intense. Long filming days became routine. Rest was limited. Expectations were constant. Abby was expected to be endlessly kind, endlessly upbeat, and endlessly reliable. Pauley delivered, even when it came at a personal cost. From the outside, the set of NCIS appeared stable and secure. It was a powerful production backed by a major network, with high ratings and a loyal fan base. To the public, it looked like the safest place an actor could be. But safety is not just about physical space or financial success. It is about trust. It is about feeling protected when concerns are raised. Over time, that sense of trust began to weaken. Small discomforts became easier to ignore at first. Like many people working within powerful systems, Pauley learned when to stay quiet and when to push forward. The show rewarded consistency and reliability. Questioning the environment felt risky. As long as the work continued and the audience remained happy, the system functioned. To speak up meant disrupting something much larger than oneself. Despite this, Pauley stayed. She felt a deep sense of responsibility to the crew, to the fans, and to the character that had come to represent something meaningful to so many people. Abby was no longer just her role. She was a symbol of hope and inclusion. Walking away felt unthinkable. Yet beneath the surface, fear slowly began to take root. What once felt like stability began to feel conditional. The illusion of safety depended on silence and endurance. Pauley did not yet realize that the environment she believed she could navigate would eventually force her to choose between her career and her well-being. When that illusion finally broke, the consequences would be irreversible as NCIS reached the height of its success. Pauley Perrette's life became increasingly complex. The show was no longer just popular. It was one of the most watched scripted dramas on television. Millions tuned in every week, and Pauley's character was consistently ranked among the most loved and trusted figures on screen. To the public, this level of success suggested security in every form. Fame, financial stability, and professional respect seemed guaranteed. But fame does not erase fear. In many cases, it makes it harder to escape. Behind the scenes, Pauley was carrying emotional weight that had been building for years. Past trauma from earlier in her life, including sexual assault and abusive relationships, did not disappear because she was successful. Instead, success added new pressure. She was expected to remain grateful, cheerful, and unproblematic at all times. Vulnerability was acceptable only when written into a script. Off camera, there was little room for weakness or uncertainty. Her personal life reflected this strain. A marriage ended amid serious allegations of abuse, leading to restraining orders and public scrutiny. Stalking became a real and constant concern. Being recognizable made her accessible in ways that felt dangerous. She had to remain alert even in places that should have felt safe, like her own home. The emotional exhaustion from living in the state of constant awareness began to take a toll. Then the danger became physical. Pauley was assaulted outside her home and threatened with death. Months later, while attempting to help a homeless person, she experienced another frightening encounter. These events were not distant possibilities or imagined fears. They were real incidents with lasting emotional impact. Despite this, she continued to work. She returned to set. She delivered performances that showed no sign of distress. The audience never saw the fear. That invisibility was part of the expectation. Inside, however, anxiety became constant. Hypervigilance followed her everywhere. Therapy became necessary, not optional. Silence became a strategy for survival. Speaking openly felt risky in a system that valued smooth production over personal safety. The idea of causing disruption felt heavier than the fear itself. Within the NCIS environment, problems did not begin with dramatic confrontations. They began quietly, moments of unease, situations where boundaries felt unclear, instances where power dynamics made speaking up difficult. When something feels wrong inside a powerful institution, the instinct is often to endure rather than challenge. Pauley had learned that instinct long before Hollywood. Publicly, she remained loyal. She spoke positively about the show. She protected the crew and the network. She helped maintain the image of harmony that surrounded the production. Privately, the cost of staying continued to rise. Safety began to feel conditional. Protection felt uneven. The environment no longer felt predictable. Once fear enters a workplace, everything changes. Trust erodes. Confidence weakens. The sense of belonging disappears. By the time fans began to notice small changes, the damage was already deep. The show's image remained intact. Ratings stayed strong. But behind the scenes, Pauley was approaching a breaking point she could no longer avoid. The idea of leaving felt impossible, yet staying felt increasingly dangerous. She was trapped between loyalty and survival. What she did not yet know was that a single incident would soon shatter any remaining sense of security and force her to confront a reality she could no longer ignore. The moment that finally broke any remaining sense of safety did not come from rumors, creative disagreements, or personal misunderstandings. It came from a real incident with real consequences, one that exposed how fragile workplace security could be when power was involved. During production of NCIS, a dog brought onto the set by a senior cast member attacked a crew member. The injuries were serious enough to require stitches and caused filming to stop. What should have been treated as a serious safety failure instead became a turning point in a much larger story. For Pauley Perrette, this incident was not something she could dismiss or ignore. She had a long history of working with animal rescue organizations and understood animal behavior well. She knew that when an animal shows signs of aggression in a stressful environment, the risk does not disappear simply because time passes. More importantly, she understood trauma. A workplace where a violent incident occurs and then repeats the same conditions that allowed it to happen does not feel safe. It feels dismissive. When the dog was later allowed to return to the set, Pauley's fear became concrete. This was no longer about discomfort or personal preference. It was about safety. She made a single clear request, that the dog not be allowed back on set. This was not an emotional demand. It was a practical one. The request was denied. From that moment forward, Pauley no longer felt protected. Fear became part of her daily routine at work. She did not simply feel uneasy. She felt endangered. Instead of addressing the underlying issue, production chose a different solution. Her contract was adjusted so that she would no longer be required to appear in scenes with the cast member involved. Filming schedules were rearranged. Scenes were shot separately. Editing was used to maintain the illusion of unity on screen that to viewers, nothing appeared wrong. The show continued as usual. The characters still interacted seamlessly. But behind the scenes, the fracture was obvious. Separation had replaced trust. Silence had replaced resolution. What makes this period especially important is what happened quietly and formally. Pauley followed official channels. She filed multiple workplace safety complaints. These were not social media posts or emotional outbursts. They were documented reports submitted through proper procedures. She did what employees are encouraged to do when they feel unsafe. She asked for protection. She asked for accountability. None of it stopped the situation from escalating. The emotional toll grew heavier. Pauley later revealed that therapy became essential during this time. Fear followed her home. Sleep became difficult. Nightmares replaced rest. Going to work felt like something she had to survive rather than something she chose. Despite everything, she continued to show up. She continued to perform. She continued to protect the production and the people around her, even as her own sense of safety disappeared. Loyalty became a burden rather than a value. The message was clear, even if it was never spoken aloud. The system would adapt around the problem, but it would not confront it directly. Power was preserved. The machine kept moving. For Pauley, this realization was devastating. She had spent years believing that professionalism and dedication would be met with protection. Instead, she learned that safety was conditional to this point. The choice in front of her became unavoidable. Staying meant continued fear. Leaving meant walking away from the role that defined her career. Neither option felt fair, but one was necessary for survival. When Pauley Perrette finally stepped away from NCIS, many people assumed the most difficult chapter of her life had ended. From the outside, it looked like a clean exit. A long-running role had come to a close, and she was free to move on. But leaving the show did not bring immediate peace. In many ways, it made everything heavier. Without the structure of daily work, the emotional weight she had been carrying for years surfaced all at once. Fear did not disappear simply because she left the set. It followed her into silence at first, Pauley did not speak openly about what had happened. She did not go on talk shows or give detailed interviews. Instead, she released small, carefully worded statements. These were not dramatic accusations. They were controlled acknowledgments. She made it clear that her restraint was intentional. She said she was protecting the crew, protecting people whose jobs depended on the show, and protecting individuals who did not have the same power she once held. Silence, once again, became a form of survival. What she did reveal, however, was enough to challenge the public narrative. She referenced multiple physical assaults. She spoke about feeling unsafe at work. She described a powerful system that prioritized image over truth. She made it clear that her departure was not the result of creative differences or personal fatigue. It was not something she could simply move past. The network responded quickly, but cautiously. They acknowledged that Pauley had raised workplace concerns and stated that the situation had been handled internally. What they did not provide were details. No timelines. No explanations. That absence of clarity was not accidental. In situations involving powerful institutions, silence often serves as containment. Behind the scenes, Pauley took steps to protect herself. She hired a private investigator. Safety violations were documented. Records were gathered. This was not about revenge or public exposure. It was about leverage. It was about ensuring that her experience could not be dismissed or erased entirely. Eventually, a private settlement was reached. The terms were sealed. The amount was never officially confirmed, but industry sources suggested it was in the multi-million-dollar range. For many observers, this looked like closure, financial security, a quiet ending. But settlements are not victories. They are compromises. The most significant condition attached to the settlement was silence. A non-disclosure agreement ensured that the full story would never be told publicly. Pauley could not correct misinformation. She could not respond to speculation. She could not explain herself fully. She was left with the knowledge that the truth existed, even if it could not be spoken plainly. Walking away from acting was not a sudden decision. It was a final step in a long process of choosing safety over visibility. Pauley confirmed that she left acting to protect herself, not because she lost interest or passion. The industry she once worked in no longer felt safe to her. Returning to it would have meant reopening wounds that had not healed. For a public figure, disappearing can be interpreted as weakness or defeat. In reality, it can be an act of strength. Pauley chose survival over reputation. She chose quiet over continued exposure. The cost of that choice was high. Her voice was limited. Her story was incomplete. But her life continued. What few people realized at the time was that her body had already been paying the price for years of fear and stress. The most serious consequence was still ahead, and it would force her to confront everything she had endured in a way she could no longer ignore. After stepping away from Hollywood, Pauley Perrette did not retreat into comfort or quiet luxury. Instead, she entered a long and difficult period of recovery, both physically and emotionally. For years, her body had been carrying the effects of fear, stress, and trauma without rest. Then one morning, everything changed. Pauley woke up unable to feel one side of her body. Her speech was slurred. Confusion and panic set in almost immediately. Within hours, doctors confirmed that she had suffered a massive ischemic stroke. For a period of time, her condition was so severe that survival itself was uncertain. The life she had once known felt suddenly fragile in a way fame had never prepared her for. Recovery was slow and unforgiving. Speech therapy became part of her daily routine. Motor rehabilitation required patience and persistence. Progress often felt invisible, measured in small victories rather than dramatic breakthroughs. What saved her life that morning, according to Pauley herself, was her rescue dog. The animal would not stop pawing at her, refusing to let her sleep through the danger. That intervention gave her the chance to get help in time. The moment reshaped her understanding of survival. It was no longer abstract or symbolic. It was real, immediate, and deeply personal. During her recovery, Pauley began to reflect differently on her past. Without the pressure to perform or protect a public image, she allowed herself to acknowledge truths she had long kept contained. She did not return with loud accusations or emotional interviews. Instead, she spoke with calm clarity. She confirmed that she left acting to protect herself. She confirmed that she felt unsafe in her workplace. She confirmed that therapy was necessary, not optional. She confirmed that silence had been enforced, not freely chosen. What made these confirmations powerful was their restraint. She did not exaggerate. She did not dramatize. She did not seek revenge. She simply stated what was true. The rumors that followed her departure were not exaggerations. The fear she experienced was not imagined. Her exit was not a whim or a loss of interest. It was a result of a system that failed to prioritize safety over power and image. AT-56. Pauley Perrette no longer frames her story as speculation or misunderstanding. She speaks with the clarity of someone who has survived and no longer needs approval. Her absence from Hollywood is not a mystery anymore. It is a boundary, a choice made to preserve life rather than career. Today, she dedicates her time to advocacy, animal rescue, and supporting victims of violence. She continues to use her voice where she can, even when it is limited. Her story stands as a reminder that success does not guarantee safety, and silence is often demanded, not chosen. What Pauley finally confirms is not just about one show or one incident. It is about how power operates, how fear is managed behind polished images, and how survival sometimes requires walking away from everything the world thinks you should want. Her story is not one of disappearance. It is one of endurance. When Pauley Perrette's story began to emerge publicly, even in fragments, the reaction from fans and the media was immediate and intense. For years, audiences had trusted the comforting image she projected as Abby Sciuto. They believed she lived a life that matched the warmth, intelligence, and reliability of her character. The news that she had endured years of fear, harassment, and unsafe conditions at work was a shock. Many fans expressed disbelief at first, struggling to reconcile the trusted public persona with the reality she had quietly faced. Social media erupted with messages of support, as well as astonishment. Viewers praised her courage and resilience, while some reflected on how much they had idealized television characters without realizing the humans behind them were vulnerable. The narrative shifted almost overnight. Pauley was no longer just a beloved actor. She became a symbol of survival and quiet strength, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that endurance often comes at a hidden cost. The media coverage, while sometimes sensationalized, highlighted critical issues about workplace safety, gender dynamics, and power imbalances in Hollywood. News outlets discussed the larger implications of her story beyond the personal experience. They explored how high-pressure environments, long-running television productions, and hierarchical power structures can leave employees, even successful actors, exposed to emotional and physical harm. Talk shows and interviews with industry experts dissected the implications of Pauley's experience. They discussed how her resilience was remarkable, but also how her story exposed systemic failures that allowed unsafe situations to continue. Across the country, conversations arose about what is considered acceptable behavior in entertainment workplaces and how loyalty and silence are often demanded at the expense of personal safety. Pauley's experience was framed as both a warning and a learning opportunity for others in similar positions. Fans were particularly affected by the human side of the story. Many shared personal accounts of how Pauley, through her role as Abby, had inspired them to pursue education, careers in science, or personal growth. The contrast between the empowerment she provided on screen and the struggle she endured behind the scenes created a profound sense of empathy. Letters, tweets, and posts from individuals of all ages flooded social media, often sharing how Pauley's quiet strength encouraged them to speak up about their own experiences or prioritize their own well-being. While the mainstream media discussed workplace policy and systemic issues, fans focused on the personal lessons, courage, resilience, and the necessity of self-protection. It became clear that Pauley's influence extended far beyond the screen. She had not only shaped fictional narratives, but also inspired real-world action and reflection among her audience. The discussion also prompted debates about the culture of celebrity and the public's expectations. Many questioned why so many assume that fame automatically equates to safety, stability, or happiness. Pauley's story revealed the pressures of maintaining a flawless public image while confronting real danger and trauma behind the scenes. Journalists and commentators debated whether the adoration of characters like Abby Sciuto inadvertently pressured actors to stay silent about serious issues. The public began to recognize the importance of separating a person from their role, of understanding that charisma and talent do not make someone immune to fear or exploitation. This reflection deepened appreciation not just for Pauley, but for countless others in entertainment and other industries who quietly endure unsafe or unfair conditions. In the end, the response combined admiration, empathy, and reflection. Fans rallied around Pauley, sending messages of hope and gratitude. The media coverage, while uneven in tone, helped bring her story into public consciousness and spark broader discussions about workplace accountability. Pauley's narrative became a case study of what happens when personal well-being collides with professional expectations, and how silence, even when strategic, comes with a cost. It was a reminder that survival is sometimes invisible to the public eye, and that those we admire may carry burdens far heavier than we realize. Her story shifted the conversation about safety. As time has passed since Pauley Perrette's departure from NCIS, her story has evolved from a personal account of fear and survival into a lasting lesson for both fans and the entertainment industry. While her absence from television left a void for audiences who loved Abby Sciuto, her impact continues to resonate in ways that go far beyond her performances. Pauley's courage in speaking, even partially, about the challenges she faced while respecting legal agreements and the privacy of others, demonstrated that integrity and survival can coexist. She showed that it is possible to protect oneself without resorting to public drama or revenge. In doing so, she became a model for resilience, not just for actors, but for anyone navigating a system where power, loyalty, and fear intersect. Her story encourages reflection on what it truly means to endure adversity while maintaining dignity and compassion. The legacy of Abby Sciuto remains closely tied to Pauley's personal narrative. The character's intelligence, empathy, and dedication to justice inspired countless fans, particularly young women, to explore careers in science, law enforcement, and forensic studies. The Abby effect continues to be cited by educators and organizations promoting STEM programs, demonstrating that the influence of a well-crafted fictional character can extend into real-world empowerment. Pauley's commitment to authenticity, studying criminology and lab procedures to portray Abby accurately, showed audiences that representation matters. Characters who reflect truth and respect for their work can inspire profound change. At the same time, the personal cost she endured to create that authenticity reminds us that behind every role, there is a human being who